16th Strathmore Town Council meeting. We now move to item 10, business. 10.1, 2024 Town of Strathmore audited annual financial statements. Good evening, Riley.
Hey, Your Worship.
Councillor Montgomery.
When did you want to deal with 7.3?
Oh, right.
Yeah, it's after.
I think it's right after this. Is that correct, Jonathan?
Yeah, thank you, Worship Council. Just to clarify, when Council made those motions at the start of the agenda, just to kind of move items around, 7.3 became 10.3.
Okay, thank you. So it'll be right after sanitary replacement. That was, I'm confused tonight. Yeah, 10.3 will be after this.
Thank you.
Thank you. Riley.
Good evening, Your Worship and members of Council. Our presentation tonight will be in two parts. I will present administration's representation of our 2024 annual financial statements. Then our auditors at Avail LLP, represented by the partner Darren Adamson online, will discuss the audit side of it, if that makes sense, and do some comparables with other municipalities, things like that. I apologize for the small text on the screen. These slides are in your package, though, if helpful, but it's going to be a really high level. We're certainly not going line by line through this. So the statement of financial position is the balance sheet in the non-municipal world. A couple things I wanted to highlight that are very big wins for council, for administration, is our net financial asset position. So we're showing $2.5 million at December 31st, where we were $1.9 million in a debt position last year. So that's a $4.5 million improvement. Very good. It speaks to our ability to provide services based on money we've collected in the past. Like we spoke about at the prior special council meeting last week, the asset retirement obligation has been implemented. That's the restatement you see on the 2023 column there, as well as a new thing you might notice is intangible assets. That is the water license that we purchased in 2023 and 2024 related to the East Calgary water line. Again, I apologize for the very small text here, but the statement of operations is the income statement in the non-municipal world, our revenue and expenses. A few items I wanted to point out to council members in case you get questions from members of the public is the very first line is our municipal property tax. It looks like it's $200,000 under budget. It looks like we brought in less than we expected to, but if you recall from our conversations during the tax bylaw in May, we funded $202,000 from reserve to ease the tax burden of residents at the time for the education requisition in 2024. That's just how it flows through in our statements. It looks like we're under budget. In reality, we're not. We funded it through reserve. Other things to focus on, $1.2 million in development activity revenue. So this is when offsite levies are received by the town. They go directly to reserves, but it does speak to the high volume of activity in 2024 above what's expected, what's continuing into 2025. Our overall accounting surplus that we're showing is $3.5 million. It looks like we have a lot more revenue than expense. In reality, council puts that money into reserve. If you recall from a couple weeks ago, we're taking surplus amounts into reserve. It looks like at a point in time that we're bringing in more revenue than we need to provide services. In reality, council puts that money away to provide services in the future. So if you do get questions on that, that is council's strategy on how we deal with any surpluses that arise as they come up through the year. I wanted to kind of speak on expenses by object. So a few items look like they might be a little over budget. A good example is our salaries, wages, and benefits came in over what we budgeted. What the main causes were the water main break response in June and July. We had incurred some overtime, things like that. The biggest one is during wildfire season, Strathmore deploys forest firefighters, to Jasper, other places in Alberta, and we incur salary costs on that. We do end up recovering that, so it comes through as a revenue. Any surplus amounts go into reserves. So that's just general things you might see. You might get questions from residents on those. And under budget on a few things like contract and general services. A lot of the carry forwards we brought to you at council a few weeks ago was kind of related to that. Projects that didn't get done in 2024 pushed to 2025, things like that. Reserves. So this is how we're looking at December 31st, 2024. We have 16.9 million in reserves, up just about 3 million from the same time last year. That's the good news side of it. The thing to be cautious on is we've already committed 4.5 million of that balance as of, well, yesterday. So very strong position. I wanted to kind of illustrate where our reserves were at when you took council, when you took your positions in council. December 31st, 2021, we had 9 million in reserves, so getting pretty close to double in the time of your term. I wanted to share that with you. Similar win or item to celebrate note for council is our debt, now, which we do talk about a lot. We do use that as council's financial management, a mandate of council kind of thing. Based on what the municipal government says we can take, based on our revenue, we can take out 59.1 million in debt, whereas we only have 13.9 million at December 31st, so less than a quarter of our limit. That's down from 16.1 at 2023, and same thing, the first statements you saw when you took your position in council in 2021 was 22.6 million in debt, so we've lopped off more than a third. That's nearly 40% reduction in debt from when you all took office in 2021. Those were the main overarching items I had wanted to go through on our financial statements. Did any members of council have questions for me on the financials, noting that Darren will speak a little more on the audit side?
Questions from council for Riley? Seeing and hearing none. Thank you, Riley, and then we'll be looking forward to hearing from Avail.
Good evening.
Good evening, Darren.
Good evening, Your Worship, Mayor and members of council. Yeah, so I'm Darren Adamson from Vail CPA. As Riley mentioned, we did the audit this year, and I'm just going to share my screen. Hopefully that worked. Is that coming through on your end?
Yes, it is.
Okay, perfect. So I just want to cover a few items tonight. Some highlights. I'm not going to go into a level of detail as well, like same approach as Riley there. Touch a little bit on the auditor's report. Very high level on the financial results as Riley's already done, so I won't repeat what he's done. A couple of notes to highlight. Some indicators of financial condition. So we do the 5-year graphs, and I'll just highlight a few of those. Management letter, I have written here option to go in camera, although I don't believe that will be necessary given that there weren't any recommendations this year. And then highlights from our post-audit letter. So some highlights on the independent auditor's report. Our opinion is at the top, and our opinion is that the financial statements are presented fairly in accordance with the public sector accounting standards. We've done whatever audit work we felt was necessary in order to provide that opinion. And so that's reflected there. It's a standard worded report, other than we do have an emphasis of matter paragraph this year that we haven't had in the past. And that is to just point out that the town adopted the asset retirement obligation standard this year, as Riley mentioned. That was done on a retroactive basis, and so it did affect the opening balances by about 125,000 on the liability side. So that's all disclosed in note 2, but we are required to highlight that in the auditor's report. The report does mention that it's management's responsibility for the financial statements. Council is responsible to oversee management, approve the statements, and of course, we're responsible for our audit. So nothing has changed there. Just on a very high level operations side, Riley went through some of the details. This year, revenues were up about 3 million over last year. Expenses were up similarly. So overall, we went from a slight operating deficit to a slight surplus, basically a break even on a $40 million-ish budget. We're at a $307,000 operating surplus. As we bring in the capital revenue, total 3.5 million total surplus, as Riley mentioned. On the financial position side, financial assets improved, liabilities went down. So on a net financial asset position, we're now positive 2.5 million compared to a negative 2 million in the prior year. So under public sector accounting standards, this is one of the indicators we look at to see what's the town's ability to pay your bills as they come due. Nice improvement over last year. So it's a good indicator. One note that I wanted to highlight was just the accumulated operating surplus. Riley did mention that you had 17 million almost in reserves. You have total accumulated surplus of just about 220 million. And of that, 202 million is invested in either capital assets or intangible assets. So it's already been spent. So out of the $219.5 million of total accumulated surpluses since the beginning of the town, the majority of it has been spent but invested in capital assets. The remainder, about 17 million, just under 17 million, is available for future spending. So not a huge war chest going forward, but there is definitely reserves to carry forward. And as Riley mentioned, improvement in the last few years. So some of the indicators of financial condition, or the graphs that we do, we're going to see a few of them that I've selected. And when we look at the graphs, we'll see comparables, 3 different comparable graph lines. And the one that I like to compare to the most is it'll be the green line, and it's comparing you to comparables of the same type. So that would be towns with a population size of plus or minus 25% of what Strathmore has. So there's a full report of indicators of financial position or condition, and I've just selected about, I think, 4 or 5 or 6 slides here to just, I think, are pretty indicative of overall results. So the first one I'm looking at here is comparing total assets to liabilities. And you'll see the town's graph is the blue line, and it extends to the current year because we have the information for 2024 for the town of Strathmore. We don't have it for the comparables until they're reported to the province and put up on the website. So those graphs all stop 1 year earlier, but it still gives us a very good trend line. So on this score, Strathmore compares very well against your peers. And the reason for that is you have a high amount of tangible capital assets compared to your peers. So your financial assets are very comparable, but your non-financial assets are much higher. So you have almost a 12 to 1 ratio compared to the town average of about 7 to 1 ratio. So very good score on total assets to liabilities. The next graph we're looking at here is comparing the operating expenses to the taxable assessment. So the taxable assessment is every year when the assessor assesses the value of the property in the town. That's what we're kind of using as our proxy measure of how is the overall economy doing. And you can see the town's taxable assessment has gone down a little bit for a couple of years and then back up the last couple of years. So as the economy has strengthened post-pandemic. If the line here is exactly flat, that would mean our expenses are exactly in line with the economy. And you can see that over the 5-year period that the line is basically flat. It's got some ups and downs, but nothing significant. And if we look at the next one, we kind of look at a similar ratio, but on the revenue side. So here we're looking at own source revenues compared to the taxable assessment. So own source revenues are the revenues that the town can generate on its own without any assistance from the federal or provincial governments. So we back out those grants that you get and say the town generated 38 million of revenue this year compared to 35 million last year. Again, if the line is flat, that would mean we're exactly in line with the economy. If we look at the town's graph, it's probably slightly increasing over the 5-year period, but very correlated, I would say, with the expense line. So everything seems to jive there. Another way to look at our long-term debt situation, Riley did mention that you have 45 million or so of unused debt capacity. And this is another way to look at it. So Here we're comparing the public debt charges to your revenues. So for next year, for 2025, the scheduled principal and interest payments on your debentures is just over $2.5 million. That works out to about 7% roughly of your revenues. So you're spending 7% of your revenues to cover previous long-term debt commitments. And you can see that has come down in recent years as debt is paid off. And you did pay off some more debt again this year, as was mentioned. So you're still slightly above the comparatives, but very close now. So a good improvement. This next slide here is showing total accumulated surplus available for future use. You have reserves of 16 million, unrestricted of 14, so just about $17 million of total accumulated surplus. And as Riley mentioned, that's almost double from 4 years ago. You can see that trend line here. Here. You are a little bit below the comparable town average. The reason for that is you've invested a lot in your tangible capital assets. So it's moved from financial asset to a non-financial asset. That's what I wanted to cover on the indicators. We do have our management letter that we give to you each year. This year we don't have any recommendations. So administration does a very good job that we found. When we do our audit, we do cradle to grave testing. We look at all the major accounting streams between payroll, expenses, the various revenue streams, and make sure we follow the transactions through from the beginning to the end, make sure everything's authorized and recorded properly, and the proper paper trail. And we didn't have any recommendations, so good job. Thank you for the great cooperation from Leanna, Riley, and their team. And finally, we have our post-audit letter, or our audit findings letter. There are various things that we are required to communicate with council or those charged with governance if we find them. So we didn't have any or find any illegal acts or fraud or have any suspicions. We didn't have any disagreements with management or any particular difficulties during the audit. So a nice report there. We do also have a couple of emerging issues. So public sector accounting standards often have changes. There are 2 changes coming up in the horizon, neither one of them for a couple of years. The first one is just on the conceptual framework. So the overarching framework for the public sector accounting standards is going to be changed a little bit. And then also the financial statement presentation, in particular, the way the statement of financial position is going to look. It's a little early to kind of get into the details now, but just a heads up that that's coming in a couple of years. So that is the highlights.
Thank you, Darren. And are there any questions from council for Darren? Councillor Wiley?
Sure, Darren, thank you. So just how awesome is our administration?
Yeah, that's a good question. No, we do get great cooperation from your administration. So it's the audit. It's always nice when we do an audit and we have good people to work with. And if there's ever any issues, we just work through them together and try to come to a solution. So,
Councillor Wegener?
I'm just ready with the motion.
Okay.
I move that council accept the 2024 annual audited financial statements as presented in attachment 1.
Thank you. And we have a motion on the floor. Are there any comments or discussion? I just want to thank our finance team, Leanna and Riley, and your staff for everything you've done to make the budget process a clear and easier to understand for lay people. But I appreciate everything you've done, and we can see it with Avail's comments as well. If there's no further comments, I'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
And that motion is carried. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Darren. Get to see you
welcome.
once a year.
Yes, thank you.
I like the beard.
Thanks. I'm just trying to find the button to stop sharing. Oh, there it is. It went over to a different screen and I lost it for a minute there. There we go. Okay, well, thank you so much. So now I guess just as a quick housekeeping item, assuming once it's approved, I will send the file to my administration assistant, and she will send emails through right signature to the two counselors, mayor and deputy mayor, I think, and then the two finance officers to sign. So you'll get an email from right signature. Watch for those. Those aren't spam. Those are actual what we're going to need to get signed. As soon as all four signed, then all the final documents will be put up on the portal for the town to access. So
Thank you, Darren. We move now to item 10.2, Thistle Way, which is tough for me when you have a lisp. Thistle Way sanitary replacement. Ethan.
Good evening, Your Worship and Council. I'll keep this quick in the interest of time. During our regular inspection and maintenance program of our sanitary sewers, our operator, EPCOR, determined that there was a issue with the sanitary line on Thistle Way. Currently, it's not causing an interruption to service. It is still operating or functioning as normal. However, it is also a risk to leave that issue if any further. We are recommending a repair, but as we looked at the project, we also looked at the age of the pipe, the condition of the pipe and such, and determined that it may be in the best interest of everyone to do a full replacement at this time. So the recommendation I've brought to council is to proceed with the full project at a cost of approximately $300,000. We do have sufficient funds within our capital reserve for wastewater. Just so council is aware, we could do the repair, but if we were to do the repair, it would not decrease the cost of the replacement in the future. So with that, I'll take questions. Thank you.
Questions for Ethan? Councillor Langmaid, then Deputy Mayor Mitzner.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just simple questions tonight. Does this go all the way along Thistle Way, or is this just a section of Thistle Way? It's a pretty big road, so I'm wondering.
Yeah, sorry to clarify. This is the north-south portion of Thistle Way. So this would be from Thornburn Place, which is the cul-de-sac at the north end, to I believe it's Thornburn Road on the south end.
Okay.
Not Center Street, not
No, just Thistle Way.
just this way.
And thank you. And what kind of interruptions might people living along Thistle Way experience? Are we going to have to have road closures for a certain amount of time?
Yeah, I would suggest that we're probably going to see road closures during the excavation, but in terms of actual service interruptions and being able to not use water or not use showers and toilets, generally that's not an issue. During the course of construction, there is bypass pumping that can occur so that use of services are not interrupted.
Perfect. That's important. People want to be able to use their sewer lines. Yes. The last question I have for you is, understanding that you don't have a crystal ball, what is the anticipated length of construction for this project?
Considering this project is relatively small in scope, I would expect a few weeks at most.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Deputy Mayor Mitzner.
Does the balance of the subdivision, like the other cul-de-sacs, do they all go into this pipe?
No. So, Deputy Mayor, Thornburn Place, which is the easternmost cul-de-sac, is kind of the point where we change directions of flow. So Thornburn Place continues down Thistle Way. However, the other cul-de-sacs continue towards Thomas Drive rather than towards Center Street.
So based on the year of construction, this will be one of 3 or 4 more replacements in that subdivision?
This is one of the older pieces of infrastructure. This road was built first, and then the cul-de-sacs were built at a later date. So this one is the oldest. And I guess I didn't mention it, but we did ask about the condition of the water line or the age of the water line. Our engineering professionals feel that the age of the water line is, considering we don't have any reason to believe that there's a leak. They're not recommending a need to replace it at this time. It's got plenty of lifespan left in it, so it's simply a sanitary replacement.
Thank you.
Councillor Peterson.
Ready with a motion, Your Worship.
Okay.
I would move that council authorize a capital budget amendment in the amount of $300,000 funded from capital reserve wastewater for Thistle Way sanitary replacement. And Your Worship, I just think, as our manager pointed out, replacement is no more money than repair, so it seems to be a no-brainer, and glad that they have the oversight and are keeping an eye on our aging infrastructure and looking after it as it needs.
Thank you. Councillor Wiley.
Yeah, just to follow up on, I support this motion. to follow the audit we just had and talking about how we're increasing our financial reserves. And I know from time to time people suggest that in order to keep taxes low, we should not be increasing financial reserves. But this is just a perfect example of something that can come about where now it's no question about whether or not we're just going to, repair it. We can afford to replace it. We've done our good housekeeping and the money is there. So I'll be supporting it.
Thank you, Councillor Wiley. Any further comments or discussion? Seeing and hearing none, I'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
And that motion is carried. Thank you, Ethan. We move now to item 10.3, which is the Strathmore Legion Crosswalk. Ethan, you're presenting on this.
Yes, Your Worship. Actually, I don't have a presentation on this, considering we were here last week to discuss the item and it was on the consent agenda. I'll just open for questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Mitzner.
So I just have a question. Originally, they talked about 2 crosswalks, one coming across from the medical center to the Legion and one coming from the West Church parking lot to the Legion. I'd like to see just one crosswalk. Do we have the option to do one, and is there a cost savings to do one versus 2, please?
So, Your Worship, and to you, Deputy Mayor, the recommendation that we've put forward is that administration just simply provide the materials for the road closure and give them connections for sourcing materials. So there really is no cost to the town at this point. If they chose to do 1 or 2, we could support either. I mean, if council decides that 1 is what should be done, I'm willing to take that recommendation, but the recommendation, at least in the report, is to let them do as they wish, just to provide guidance.
Thank you. Councillor Montgomery.
Thank you. I just have a motion ready whenever you're ready.
Okay.
So I will move that we defer this item until after the policy related to semi-permanent and permanent public displays is completed. And if I can speak to that.
Okay.
Thank you. So as I mentioned, I've moved to defer the consideration of the proposed commemorative crosswalk for our local Legion branch until such time as a formal policy governing permanent and semi-permanent displays on public property has been developed and adopted. I'll start first by expressing my sincere admiration and gratitude for the Legion and its members. Their contributions to our nation and our community are deeply valued. This motion is not in any way a reflection of diminished respect for that legacy. Rather, it reflects a principled commitment to sound governance and procedural consistency. When Council was previously asked to consider a request for a symbolic crosswalk installation, a rainbow crosswalk in support of Pride, I voted against it. Not because I oppose any messages related to that or inclusivity, etc., but because we had no policy in place to guide our deliberations. In response to that gap, I brought forward a motion directing administration to draft a policy to ensure that such requests are evaluated transparently, fairly, and equitably. And that motion was passed. And yet, as of tonight, no policy has been brought forward. To proceed with approval of any display prior to adopting the very framework we agreed was necessary would be premature and would, in effect, render the intent of that prior motion meaningless. We must not allow ourselves to make ad hoc decisions based solely on the merits of individual applicants or the popularity of particular causes. That path leads to inconsistency, to perceived bias, and to a weakening of public trust in our decision-making. Let us finish the work we started. Let us adopt the policy we agreed was essential. And only then, through a principled and consistent lens, should we consider requests such as the one before us this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Mitzner.
I will not support this motion because timing is of the essence. The task at hand is to complete it prior to Canada Day and their 100-year anniversary. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Councillor Peterson.
Yeah, I do think that having come forward with this in lieu of the 100th anniversary is a really, really important time frame process for our community. This was also a community-based initiative. And I would love to be able to honor our veterans, especially in terms of their 100-year anniversary, and having a visual that speaks to our veterans' sacrifice, especially at this incredible time, and be able to do it so that we have a year-round demonstration of it. I certainly don't need to wait for any further information. I'm very pleased that we have an engineering design construction standards relevant to this, to commemorative crosswalks that was already completed. So I think that that this crosswalk will recognize year-round the sacrifice of veterans. And one of the things that I think is remarkable about Strathmore is that in World War I, 100% of the eligible men in our community signed up for service. Many of them didn't come back. And so, you know, just being able to celebrate them year-round on this 100th anniversary, and hopefully well into the future, we'll be able to build the profile of the Legion in our community. We'll bring more people into their realm. And I'm also pleased to say that they've also incorporated an Indigenous liaison with Siksika. And something that people may not know is that Gleason used to have a Legion, and as the town shrunk in size and then was eventually taken over by the county, and the Legion in Gleason became part of the Strathmore Legion, and so many of the Indigenous veterans were also represented there. So it's become a very much a larger community representation. So I won't be supporting this motion, and I'm prepared to make a motion once we've dealt with this one, Your Worship.
Thank you. Any other comments? Then I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? And the motion is defeated. Councillor Peterson.
Your Worship, I move that Council direct administration to provide materials necessary for a road closure and assist the Legion in sourcing the necessary materials for their commemorative crosswalk.
Thank you. We have a motion on the floor. Discussion, questions, comments on that? Councillor Montgomery.
Thank you. Having just attempted unsuccessfully to defer this matter until the appropriate policy is in place, I now feel compelled to speak in opposition to the motion currently before us. To be absolutely clear, my objection is not rooted in any disagreement with the intention of this proposal. I hold the utmost respect for our Legion and the generations of service members it represents. Their sacrifices deserve recognition and honor in our public realm. But our role here tonight is not simply to express admiration, it is to exercise good governance. That requires that we act with consistency, transparency, and integrity. Last year, when another group, equally sincere in their request, brought forward a proposal for a Pride-themed crosswalk, I spoke against it and voted against it on the grounds that we lacked a coherent framework to assess such proposals. Council agreed to look at, or to direct administration to bring forward a policy regarding this, and we collectively passed a motion to develop that very framework. That policy has not yet materialized, and yet here we are being asked to move forward with a new commemorative installation, again, absent any guiding criteria or evaluative lens. Approving this request without a policy in place undermines the very principles we claimed to uphold. It invites accusations of arbitrariness or favoritism and sets a precedent where decisions appear to hinge more on the popularity of the applicant than on any objective standard. If we genuinely believe in fairness, then we must apply the same rules to every request, regardless of the cause, regardless of the applicant. That is the only way to preserve the credibility of this council and the trust of those we serve. I urge you to vote against this motion, not out of disrespect, but out of respect for process principle and the importance of treating all applicants equally under a policy we have yet to enact. Thank you.
Thank you. I will be voting in favor of this motion primarily because timing is of an issue with the Legion and its anniversary. And I think common sense, I know we need to have policy in place. I agree with that motion, but I think common sense also dictates or would lend itself to the fact that I'm pretty sure this council and a next council would not turn down the Legion's request to have a crosswalk. And with timing being so critical in this aspect, I think council can make decisions as the need arises. And I believe this is a need that's arisen because of their anniversary and the timeline involved in that. So I will be supporting the motion. Councillor Langmaid and then Councillor Peterson.
Thank you, Worship. Well, I agree that a policy is needed for these types of decisions, and I agree that there should be fairness in making these decisions. I come to a different conclusion on what it would be considered fairness in this situation, where we have already approved one commemorative crosswalk in our community. I think it would be unfair to deny the approval of another when in the same situation where there is no policy present. I do look forward to seeing that policy, and I think it's one that is important for council to consider. But I think in interest of fairness, I have to consider this in the same way that I considered the last request in light of there being no policy of direction, and that is to approve it. And thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Peterson.
Thank you, Worship. I just want to point out that on page 65 of our agenda, of our 369-page agenda, under policy, it does state that the town administration recently completed an engineering standard for commemorative crosswalks, and it is outlined here if anybody wants to look at it. And so it assures that the project complies with the standard to ensure pedestrian and vehicular safety. And so it goes without saying that sometimes we can make logical and rational and decisions in the best interests of our community and assure those measures are also taken into consideration. So I think that we've done more than due diligence, Your Worship, and I'm very, very grateful to our local Legion for bringing this forward.
Thank you. Councillor Montgomery.
Thank you. Yeah, it's true that there is some information now about the standards that we expect as far as like ensuring that the painting will be done in a way that is safe for pedestrians to use the crosswalk. I'll compare this to freedom of speech or freedom of expression as we have here in Canada. So obviously we don't have laws protecting freedom of expression to protect the things that we all agree with and the things that aren't controversial. We have freedom of expression to protect the expression of things that are controversial and that not everybody agrees with. And so how that compares to this situation is it's actually more important that we wait for a policy for things that we agree with to show that we are willing to test the things that we agree with against some sort of objective metric to prove that they would actually stand up and that we would treat them the same as things that we disagree with, because one day there will come a public semi-permanent or permanent display that members of council or some members of council will not agree with. And at that time, people might be hard pressed to come up with logical or consistent reasons why that should not go forward when others have gone forward. And so that's why I think it's important that as politicians, it's important that we act by policy. And that is why I am unable to support this. But I do thank the Legion for bringing this forward, and I thank all the people who the Legion represents for their hard work and sacrifice, and for defending the principles that we uphold through good governance. Thank you.
My question would be that, wouldn't it be very disappointing if the Legion could not honor their veterans with a crosswalk in time for the anniversary? So, I mean, we can tout policy and stand by policy, but when something like this comes up that is an honoring of veterans in time for a celebration, an anniversary, I think it could hurt a lot of the people who defended our rights over the many years. So I'm still in favor of doing this for the Legion. We want to honor these people, and the timeline is really important to the local Legion. Councillor Peterson?
I just wanted to say, Your Worship, that decency in terms of respect is an objective metric too.
Any further comments? Then I'll call the question. All in favor of the motion? Opposed? And the motion is carried. We move now to 10.6, capital budget amendment, plow truck. Yeah, I think we should. Good evening, Donna, and welcome.
Good evening, Your Worship and Council. As part of the 2025 capital budget, the Council approved the purchase of a new plow truck to replace PW 2022. We've had some emergent items come up with this truck. So the body of the truck was quoted at $261,046. And prior to implementation of recent tariffs, the chassis was quoted at $207,000 and bringing the total cost of the projected cost of the truck to $468,000. On Friday, we were informed that the cost of the chassis will be increasing due to impacts of tariffs. As of Friday, the tariff impact was approximately $8,000. However, the chassis has not been built and is not scheduled for production until August. Given the potential for additional tariffs beyond the current price, we anticipate that there could be further increased costs before delivery. While it is difficult to precisely quantify the impact of these tariffs, it is possible the financial implications could be significant. In light of this, we've identified an alternative opportunity to purchase a last year model of a Western Star chassis, which is currently available for immediate acquisition at a cost of $216,000. This chassis not only meets but exceeds the specifications of the originally quoted model. An anticipated additional cost of approximately $3,000 would also be required for fabrication to accommodate the specific upfitting. So additionally, the vendor has indicated that the hydraulics, along with other critical components necessary to complete the truck build, may also be impacted by imposed tariffs. The tariffs have disrupted production stability, contributing to delays in the manufacturing process. While the truck was originally scheduled for delivery in early fall, the anticipated delivery date could now be pushed back into the new year. And as the hydraulic system is one of the final components to be installed, and due to the ongoing uncertainty surrounding availability and pricing, staff estimates that an additional $12,000 in costs may be incurred. So the acquisition of the Western Star chassis, along with the associated fabrication costs for the specific upfitting and the estimated additional expense for the hydraulic system, would bring the total projected cost of the truck to approximately $500,000, exceeding the allocated budget by roughly $30,000. However, we feel this approach presents a strategic advantage by mitigating the risk of further cost increases resulting from ongoing or future tariff impacts. So we are here to ask Council to approve the addition of $30,000 to come from the local government fiscal framework grant to be put towards the purchase of the truck.
Thank you, Donna, for the thorough explanation as to how we got where we are, and it has a good news side to it as well.
Yes.
Questions or comments? Questions, I guess, Councillor Lang made.
Thank you, Worship. First, I appreciate your diligence on this because plow trucks are an essential piece of equipment in our town and something that our residents expect to see when the snow flies. So it's good to think about this now and ensure that the equipment we need is going to arrive. I just have a couple of quick questions for you. In terms of familiarity with Westerns, I don't know anything about equipment, so I'm sorry if this is a stupid question. But in terms of like the Western Star chassis, it has the same repairability? We know how to deal with that?
Yes.
With that version of equipment?
Yep.
Well,
I have a very
parts are
qualified
available.
mechanic that, yes, absolutely.
Perfect.
Yes.
And then I was just wondering if you could clarify for me, I was confused on what we expect the delivery date to be if we go with this new chassis versus the old one.
We can't guarantee yet. They're anticipating, they originally were anticipating an early fall. They're now saying it's possible because the tariffs have impacted so much of the production right now of everything. So they're anticipating possibly the new year. We're hoping still for fall, depending what happens, maybe when we get a new prime minister, CUSMA gets adjusted, like it possibly could be sooner, could be. But PW 22 is still operational, just to be clear. Like it's reached the end of its life, but it is still operational. Residents will still see a plow truck out there, regardless if it's this new one or our old one.
Perfect. Thank you very much for answering my questions. Yes.
Councillor Wegener.
I'm ready with the motion. I move that council approve the additional amount of $30,000 to come from the local government fiscal framework grant to be put towards the purchase of a snow removal vehicle for the operations department.
Thank you. And now that we have a motion on the floor, is there any discussion on that motion? Seeing and hearing none, I'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
And that motion is carried.
Thank you.
All right, we move now to 11, councillor information inquiries, 11.1, questions between councillors and or council statements. Do any councillors have any questions for fellow councillors or who wish to make any statements? Seeing and hearing none, I'll move now to 11.3, question and answer period. Are there any questions for administration? Seeing and hearing none. You're good, Mark? We move now to 11.4, administrative inquiries. Jonathan, do we have any? Notices of motion? None tonight? Okay. That brings us to a closed meeting, the second closed meeting, Jonathan. Sorry.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council. Administration is just wondering if Council would consider making a motion to extend the meeting past 10 tonight, just knowing that we do have a couple in-camera items left to go.
Okay. Councillor Langmaid?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd move that we extend tonight's meeting to 10:30. 10:30. If needed.
Yeah. Okay, so we have a motion on the floor to extend to 10:30. Mark's against it, but we're all in favor.
Aye.
And that motion is carried, and now I'm looking for a motion to go in camera. Councillor Langmaid.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd move that council move in camera to discuss items related to sections 24(1)A and 19(1) of the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act at 9:26 p.m.
Thank you. You've all heard the motion. All in favor?